everyone, it's Nate. So I bet from the title of the video that you can kind of tell we're talking about today, and I hope you don't click off, I hope you don't run away, because this applies to you. Why does it apply to you? Well, let's get into that. But before we get too far, there's one thing that I need to address that is so important. It is taking over the world right now, and you are at risk of smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm and also subscribing to the channel. It helps me out greatly. Thank you. So living paycheck to paycheck sounds not super good. But the thing is, though, a lot of Americans actually do live paycheck to paycheck. When asked, 80% of working adults in the US said that they live paycheck to paycheck, meaning they already spent their paycheck or they have spent it by the time the next payday rolls around. 80% of all working adult Americans. That number is crazy to me. And we hear, we're living paycheck to paycheck, and we think of it as some horrible thing. The people that live paycheck to paycheck are the people who work minimum wage jobs. And that's not true at all. The people that were interviewed for this were from very different socioeconomic statuses. The rate stayed pretty consistent, though, when the people that were making $30,000 a year and the people that were making $200,000 a year, that number stayed relatively static throughout the entire study. An average of 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So this video applies to you, statistically speaking. But I may be wrong. I'm not always right. I'm not a robot. So along with these kind of depressing factoids that I'm throwing out at you, I have another one too. So get ready. So my other kind of depressing factoid is going to be that 41% of Americans, when they were asked, said that they could not cover a $1,000 surprise expense. If that came up, it would put them into debt. That's a really scary statistic because anything breaks in your car, it's instantly several $100s, let alone up to $1,000. So having that be an issue for 2/5 of the population, that is massive. That is a massive problem. So along with these scary, depressing statistics, there's also one that kind of gives us a glimpse of hope. When asked, again, about 1/3 of all working U.S. adults track their expenses. That's something good, right? So we have 80% that are living paycheck to paycheck. We have 40% of people that couldn't even have $1,000 if they needed it if an emergency came up. And then we have 33-ish% of the population that tracks their expenses. Now, I'm no rocket surgeon, but I have a feeling these are correlated at some point, and I'm going to get into that. So having established that 1/3 of the population in the U.S. does track their expenses, we can assume that the other 2/3 don't. So taking the percentages from that, you get 67-ish%, and then we take the first statistic I gave you of 80%, and those are relatively close in range, and I think it's relatively safe to assume that those two are connected in some way. See, when you track your expenses and you hold every cent accountable in your life for providing value, and you measure that against, what you have coming in and what your needs are, you can very easily identify the places of waste in your life. And by identifying these places of waste, you can replace those with things that add value to your life. Whether that is more experiences or saving more or investing more. Whatever that looks like for you, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the steps on how you can break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. So step one with figuring any problem out is going to be understanding it 100%. So what you need to do is you need to take inventory of all the money that you have coming in, all the money that you have currently. So if you have a few bank accounts, you have a savings account, checking account, you have that, great, total that up, add that up, just keep track of that. And then you go over to maybe say you have a few investment accounts, it may be say Acorns investment account or a Robinhood or M1 Finance, any of those, take inventory of what you have there. So once you have inventory of all the assets that you have, you then need to look at all of these things you're spending money on. To best do this, you're going to want to start and break things down to the most bare essential things that you absolutely need to survive. So these things could be rent, mortgage, insurance, groceries, transportation costs, medicine, and also debt repayment. These are the things that you absolutely have to cover There may be a few others that throw in there, but these are the things you absolutely have to cover to be able just to survive. So once you've narrowed these expenses down to the bare essentials that you have, this is where you start building your budget from. When my wife and I got married, our incomes were not what they were today. Starting out, our total gross income was $35,000. Today, it's nearly 4 times that, but starting out, we built all of our expenses around that income. So after taxes, it was just about $2,500 per month. And on that income, we paid for our rent, we paid for our groceries, we paid for a wedding. You know how expensive weddings are. And the reason we were able to do all that is because we understood how much we had and what our absolute bare necessities were, and we didn't spend beyond that. We saved every penny that we could. And so within just about a year and a half of marriage, we were able to move into this house here. And it was because of our diligent saving and our responsible spending. So what I found is the absolute best way to learn how to cut out all the unnecessary junk financially in your life, in your budget, is to use some of the tools that you have available to you. One of my favorite things to do is to use apps to help me track all of my expenses. So here's how that works. There are 2 apps that I really like that I use basically every day. One of them is called Mint, the other is called Albert. Mint is really great for tracking all your expenses. You can set budgets for certain categories, and once you have all that set up, then you can link your bank account, your credit cards, all of that to that account, and every month it'll give you a summary of all that you spent, all that you saved, where you are on certain things. So if you set a budget for yourself of, say, $200 for groceries for the month, and you go over that, it will give you an alert and it'll let you know, hey, you're over budget by $50 or whatever it ends up being. And that's really helpful, so you know, okay, I need to calm down with this and not spend money on groceries. So Mint is really good for tracking your expenses and then finding the areas that you're really overdoing it in. And here's a few of the ones that you don't really think about that can really sneak up on you. So I know that there are those that would go and attack someone if they mention they drink Starbucks. Starbucks is not going to ruin your financial path to whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. It's not. A single cup of Starbucks coffee will not do that. But if you make a habit of spending a lot of money on things you could do cheaper otherwise, it'll add up over time. And if that's worth it to you, if the $5 coffees bring value to you and that's what you want, go for it. But if you're realizing I can get the same thing at home for like 30 cents, 40 cents, then go do that. It's completely up to you. But here's my input. So I know that there are some that are going to go out of their way and just give you a hard time for having Starbucks. They're going to say it's expensive. They're going to say their coffee beans are burnt. Well, you know what? Those are both true. But you also know what? Drinking a cup of $5 coffee isn't going to ruin your financial future. But what I will say is that if you can find a way to save just a few dollars a day, it's going to pay off a lot over a period of time. So another app that I love that I use every day, and I love so much, is Albert. So let me explain what Albert is. Albert is an app that automatically saves money for you. Simple as that. Just like the Mint app, you're going to connect all of your accounts and cards and all that to the Albert app, and it is going to track every penny of yours, just like the Mint app, but it's going to do this cool thing. It will, using the algorithm that it has, track your expenses and your income, and it will save between $10 and $40 per week. Somewhere in there, depends on how your spending is and how much you have, but it knows exactly how much you can save, and it does it for you. And it's in amounts that come out a little at a time, so you don't even notice it gone. So I have my Albert app set up, and it does what it does, and I won't even realize that it's doing what it's doing, and then I'll look in there, and oh, there's like $400 in here. Where'd that come from? That's from using tools at our disposal that are free to use and can help us save money. I know saving is really hard, and the discipline of saving consistently is really challenging, but for your long-term financial health, getting into the habit of living below your means as early as possible, it's the absolute best thing that you can do for yourself long-term. So now that we've identified all of our income and cut down our expenses to the bare minimum and gotten rid of all the waste in our life and used all the free tools at our disposal to help us find what we truly need, here's where it gets fun. This 4th step is going to be to build an emergency fund. An An emergency fund is a stash of cash that you keep in your savings account, checking account, wherever you keep it. You put that aside, and you should have enough in there to last you between 3 and 6 months. And when I say 3 to 6 months, I mean this should cover all of your base living expenses that we identified earlier for 3 to 6 months. So for example, if we're building an emergency fund for 3 months and your monthly expenses are $1,000, then a 3-month emergency fund would be $3,000. With how crazy the world is right now and people are getting sick and things are shutting down and the whole world is just coming to a screeching halt, it's a sobering time to realize how important this is. Having an emergency fund in place like this can be the difference between you maintaining all of your hard-earned accomplishments and your car that you paid for and the house you got and the lands you got and the people you support versus having everything come crashing down and because there's a little instability for a few months, you just couldn't make all the bills and now your credit's shot, or now you've lost your car, or you lose your job and then you lose everything. Having an emergency fund in place can help prevent you from years of heartache with dealing with a bad credit score, with dealing with the loss of all your assets. But aside from all the heavy stuff tied with this, having an emergency fund just gives you a confidence to know that no matter what happens, you're okay. You're okay for a bit. Everything's gonna be just fine, and you can know that. This kind of confidence also comes in really good when you're applying for different jobs. So say you just got laid off from your job and you are looking around for a new position to open up, and you go interview at places and you don't quite love them, but times are getting tight and you just need to find something that you can get into and work at. And you lower your standards for where you want to work at because you're in a more desperate situation. And long term, that can negatively impact you. But if you go into something with the confidence knowing that no matter what happens, it's okay, that gives you the courage and the ability to say no to things that you don't absolutely love. And so you can search and search and search until you find the place that you're meant to be at. And so step 5 is going to be saving for tomorrow. What that means is once you've built up your emergency fund and once you have done all the other steps in this video, now is the time to focus on investing. And so investing could mean a lot of different things. It could mean saving for a down payment on a rental home. It could mean putting money into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA or a variety of different things. Whatever it looks like to you, but that is one of the better ways to grow your money long term after you've settled your emergency stuff that you need and you have everything set up in that capacity. But before we get too far, there's one thing that I need to address that is so important. It is taking over the world right now, and you are at risk of smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm and also subscribing to the channel. It helps me out greatly. Thank you. So with that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some value out of it. And the reason I do all this is because a lot of the things that I learned in adulthood, they weren't taught to me as a child. And financially, I didn't have the 100% best examples of things. And so I've learned the hard way in some things, and I really want to pass on the lessons that I've learned to you, maybe before you make some mistakes like I did. So with that being said, have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next time.